what do you think the field of ABA is doing wrong?
Oh,
Oh, we're getting into it. Okay. So I think that, the field right now, it's trying to imitate what was done in psychology. And I think we can do better.
Welcome back, everybody, to another amazing episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. I am, as always, Brandon, and I am joined by my amazing co-hosts, Kate and Brianna. Today, we are so excited to be joined with Carlos Del Rio. He is a motivational speaker. He is an author and quite possibly the best ABA backflipper that there could ever be. Carlos, we are so excited to just hear about your journey, to hear about your pitfalls, your success, and feel free, take it away. How did you get into ABA? Let's start with that.
Been all smooth sailings, to be honest. I appreciate you guys having me. It's awesome. I love all you guys. And yeah, I'll give you guys a little bit of a background of my background so you guys can get to know me a little bit better. I am Dominican, born in Dominican Republic, grew up in New Jersey. I went and get my bachelor's in psychology when I was in Jersey, moved to Arizona for about 8 years, got my master's in applied behavior analysis and special education. I was out there. I worked as an RBT. I worked as a special education teacher for a few years as well. I worked in homes, clinics, schools, yeah, I've been in the field for a while, and I've been blessed to get the chance to come back to the Dominican Republic. So now, about 6, 7 weeks ago, I just moved back to the Dominican Republic where I can begin the process of opening the first special needs center in my province here, like ever, which is crazy because it's the biggest province in the island in the Dominican Republic. And so I'm actually opening the first one here, and it's been an amazing journey, and it really feels full circle to be able to bring all these blessings back to my homeland and share with the people who need it most. So yeah, quick little background about me, and I'm an open book, so go ahead. You can ask whatever you guys want to ask. So good.
So there's one, I don't mean to cut you
no,
off.
you're good.
There's one question that's been on my mind, and I've seen it posted a couple times and in a couple different like spots on the internet. And it is that you are a wellness strategist. Can you maybe dive a little bit into exactly what that means and how you can define it for our viewers and for us?
For sure. So I've been coaching adults for almost a decade now, and organically, it kind of just became part of something that I do. Even when I was in clinic, even when I was teaching, I always had people that I was working with and coaching. And last year, actually, I decided to move away from teaching and quit my special education job, and I started coaching high-level professionals full time and working with organizations across the U.S. So I do a lot of coaching on corporate wellness. I do a lot of coaching on compassion fatigue, burnout prevention, and I literally wrote a book on this stuff. It's called Relax and Awake, where I break down the 6 pillars of wellness, the same pillars that I've been teaching high-level professionals, Olympic level athletes, 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs as well, on how to do more, stress less in the digital age. So a lot of my work has to do with giving people the tools that they need so they can become independent, and at the same time, get more stuff done without having to sacrifice their mental health or their well-being. So a lot of people are struggling right now, and a lot of the work that I do started as me working one-on-one, and now I'm in a space where I have a team of high-level professionals, PhD level, college professors, and we work with organizations, and we provide them with the tools so they can navigate this crazy time that we're living in.
It's fantastic and honestly so needed. As you said, the digital age is a little bit scary. So to have someone who's well versed in how to take that stress away and maybe just level out, thank you for the work that you do.
For sure, and I'll start sharing some gems. I think stress is good. I think stress is good. A lot of the time, the problem is that people have a very destructive relationship with stress, and especially the way that our bodies are set up, and in the environment that we live in, there's a disconnect, right? So being aware of how the purpose of stress is so crucial. And that's one of the main things that I like to teach my people. Like, how can you really use stress for your benefit? Because a lot of people try to just like, no, I don't want to ever be stressed. I don't want to have stress, but it's more about really finding that power that's in stress in your genes, and repurposing it to do things that are more productive, like backflipping on top of mountains and stuff like that.
Never
It's
thought of it that way, honestly.
it's I was going to say it's actually funny you say that because I'm currently reading a book and it's called Good Morning Monster, and it's about a psychiatrist and her top 5 patients that she just remembers and has made the most progress with. And something that she always harps on in the book, especially with one individual in particular, I'm not going to spoil the book for anybody, but she says that without struggle, there is no joy. So it's just what you do with that struggle that gives you perspective. And if you can navigate it proficiently, it really can help you see things in a different light and appreciate joy as it finds you in a later time. So I really couldn't agree with that more, honestly.
Yeah.
I agree, and stress is good. Anytime I say this, people are like, "What?" My stress is good. I like to, personally engage in intentional stress, because and that means, I run up mountains with no water. Like, I really push my body physically. I push my mind as well, and I put myself in situations where, I am basically going through those same feelings of stress. And what that allows me to do is when life happens and that natural stress comes up, I'm more equipped and I can handle it better. But what a lot of people do is that they completely try to avoid stress, and then when any little stressful situation that comes up, it like takes over their whole life. And we don't have to live like that. So and a lot of the time, by us building our resilience and really understanding that relationship with stress, then we can respond instead of react, which is what most people do, and that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely learn a lot about someone when they go through a stressful situation. You'll see a lot of their emotional responding, their behavior will change. And I think it teaches you a lot about a person and just their overall ability to handle those things when you're watching someone go through it, especially if you're going through it with them, whether you're a significant other or a friend. But I really think it does speak volumes about someone, how they handle stress and
Mhm.
struggles in their lives. I also think that the more you put yourself through things like that, or maybe not purposely put yourself in that situation, but just how you handle it and use it as a learning tool and a learning opportunity
Yeah.
for the future, you really do shape that mental tenacity like a muscle, right? The more you use it, the better you get at it. So I know a lot of people have been dealt a very crummy deck of cards. But again, it's what you do with it. And the more you face those things head on and have those positive outcomes, it really does shape a really great person for the future. So I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Blood, sweat, and tears went into all the work that I do, so I appreciate you. It's something that I'm very excited about, and no, and like you guys mentioned, it's very needed right now. There's a lot of people are struggling, and there's a lot of changes happening, and most people are living very sedentary lives, not getting any sunlight, they're typically not eating well, and with that just complicates things even more, especially in this really fast changing world. So I really do love doing this work all the time, and sharing those tools with people, because there's so much overwhelm happening and people just they know what to do, they just don't know what works best for them. So I, my what I'm all about is really providing those tools in a way that people can actually practice them, and so it can be practical and applicable right away. Not like tomorrow when you watch another YouTube video and you're lost, but like some stuff that you can start actually doing right now. And for the most part, it's very small tweaks that most people need to start seeing massive results.
Is that
Yeah.
something that you advocate for a lot? Is those holistic interventions and those self-stimulatory behaviors to help them cope with stress, like getting enough sunlight, getting enough sleep, getting out and getting their movement in?
Yeah, so I definitely do. I definitely do. My approach is very holistic, and I break this down in my book. But overall, I like to really dive into the 6 pillars of wellness, And I started with the physical because it's just the, behavior, the most measurable. You can like see it and measure it the quickest. And you can also see results the fastest. I like to start with physical health, really, you know, equipping people with the tools of breath work, movement, feeding your body the right stuff. Then I like to move into mental health, of course. And people always ask me, like, why don't you just start with mental health? Like, your background's in psychology. And it's really difficult for you to really dive into the complexities of mental health if your body's dysregulated. And most people's bodies are dysregulated, especially their nervous system. So when we can regulate the nervous system, then we can start diving a little bit deeper into that shadow work. We can start really going deep into identity work and shifting your paradigms. Then we can move into spiritual health, which just naturally occurs the deeper that you go. Then ultimately, of course, we go into behavioral because once you're clear on your values, you understand what drives you, then we can start getting a little bit more technical. We can start really changing those habits objectively. Then we move into social health, and then we finish with financial health as well. So making sure that we are having that holistic approach is crucial for all the clients that I work with, whether it's individual organizations in the East, West Coast, in Europe, Dominican Republic. It's really helpful to make sure that we're attending the whole person. A lot of the time in psychology, behavior analysis, mental health work, we tend to like separate those areas, and that causes a lot of disruption and a lot of friction between them. And that typically just creates so much overwhelm, stress, anxiety in people's bodies that they typically just give up and just kind of go back to those same cycles that they were in because it's easier, simpler. But when we can actually build a really strong foundation, it's a lot easier for us to make the changes that we need to make, and most importantly, for these changes to be sustainable and maintain throughout time and in different environments.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing this work too, because I say this all the time. I feel like, especially as behavior analysts, we're poor observers of our own behavior. So, we're out there observing everyone else and making changes for them, but sometimes when it comes to ourselves, we forget. And I don't I feel like we've talked to so many people, even just in this field, where it's like, hey, I'm burnt out, I'm this, I'm that. And then it's like, okay, are you eating? What are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you getting enough sunlight? Are you moving throughout the day?
Yeah.
And it's so many little things that people just forget to do because they're just so ingrained in whatever it is they're doing for, especially the profession.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I work with a lot of academics, a lot of BCBAs, BCBADs, and there's definitely this big disconnect. And a lot of the time it's because just you're exhausted, like you're fatigued on, like you don't even want to think about it for yourself. Like you just spent 40, 50 hours this week. Like I don't want to even think about it. And I'll share a blessing as well, like and or a tool if you guys mind. That's really helpful, and it's a great way for people to start getting grounded, and that's breath. Most people don't know how to breathe, and that's the cheapest way to transform. It's free. And when we're able to know how to breathe, and if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, so how do I know if I'm breathing right? Well, most people are engaging in shallow breathing. So like they're using a very small capacity of their lungs. They're not really expanding the diaphragm, or your stomach doesn't expand when you take a deep breath. And what that does is that because you're breathing so shallow, it speeds up your heart rate, right? So then your head is also going a lot quicker. But when you learn to actually get a full breath in, expand your diaphragm, get the full capacity of the breath that you're taking, that slows down your heart rate, which ultimately slows down your brain. So instead of trying to start here, let's start here and let work our way up. It's a very simple thing to do, but most people do not know how to do. And because of it, like whenever you speak to someone who's engaging in shallow breathing, you can tell. So when people come around me and they're in my space, and I can sense that, and I kind of just nudge them into slowing down their breath so they can slow down the heartbeat and slow down their brain. You can tell it's a lot easier to have more clarity. It's a lot easier to respond instead of react because you kind of move away from that fight or flight and start using your prefrontal cortex and that rational part of the brain a little bit better. Not the best, especially if you're starting, but you can start strengthening those skills and really strengthening those structures in your brain. And it really does start with the breath and something you can do anywhere at any time. And all of us have access to. Like you don't need to get a master's degree. You don't need to none of that. Like when you start with the breath, and it's a lot easier for you to, like I like to say all the time, organize your mental closet and then, clean the shit from the mirror so that you can see yourself clearly.
I love
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That was beautiful.
I think that's great too, because especially, you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok, wherever you're going, you're seeing all these, hacks and trends, and you have to spend several $100s if you want to live your best life and this and that. So I love that you share these tips too, that, like you said, they're free and accessible for everyone, because not everyone's able to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on all the new cool wellness things. I will say, I've got a few of them, and Kate's got a few of them. However, just something like breathing is huge. And something I wasn't focusing on until recently, when I thought a shoulder injury. Apparently, I went to a chiropractor, and he's been helping me with breath work. Not even like, hey, your shoulders are messed up. It was I wasn't breathing correctly during my workouts, and it was causing like stress on my shoulders. So I appreciate those who help with the breath work.
I was going to say, actually, coincidentally, that was like one of the questions that I wrote down to ask, was for somebody like me I feel like their brain is just so, it's just overactive, and it's really hard for me to turn off and even engage in breath work. Honestly, the only time I feel like I'm successful at it is when there's like a competing stimuli, and that's like me working out at the gym, and I have to focus on it or I will pass out. Just from like pushing weight. But how do you, or what do you do or suggest to people who would like to engage in breath work that aren't doing an alternate activity to, I guess, turn off their brain or occupy it so they can focus on breath work? Because I've tried in the past, I've attended yoga classes, I've done a bunch of things, and it's just like I can't turn my brain off. So I'm sure you come into contact with a lot of your clients who have the same issue.
100%, many, 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 many times, many, many times. So what you're describing is something that I see a lot of people mention. It's like, hey, I want to just turn my brain off and start thinking. And the reframe that I want to present you with is the idea that your brain's job is to have thoughts. And typically we have 20 to 80,000 thoughts a day. The difference is most people allow those thoughts to kind of consume them. Instead, what through breath work we can do is be okay with sitting and just observing the thoughts. And what I would recommend, and that one of the things that I always do, is choosing one breathwork practice. Because a lot of the time, if we're having a tough time just sitting with our thoughts, and our thoughts are like basically eating our lives, it's very important for us to really learn how to slow down. And there's a million different things of breath work out there that that people do. There's a million on YouTube. My favorite is the Wim Hof method. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It's WIMHOF, the Wim Hof method, and this was created by a Dutch athlete 20 years ago. He has the record for running. You guys see most social media. I like to really push the human body. Like, I think the human body is able to do superhuman things. But to me, those are just human things. And the Wim Hof method, what it does is that it reduces pain tolerance. So it also slows down your parasympathetic nervous system, which makes it a lot easier for you to really sit with those thoughts. And what I love about it even more is that it's a practice. So when you commit to the practice of doing it, if you haven't done it, maybe 3 times a week, but ultimately you want to get to a point where you can do like every day or every other day even. And it takes about 10, 11 minutes. You can find it easily on YouTube. He's been doing this for a long, long time. Wim Hof, he is known for having the record for running a marathon in the Arctic Circle. He has the record for swimming under ice in a lake with nothing. He's climbed Kilimanjaro in shorts. The dude is a powerhouse. And if you ask him, what do you do? It's like, I do the Wim Hof method. The Wim Hof method is a very simple process. It's a 3-step process. First step, it's basically hyperventilation. So you're taking 40 deep breaths, like I mentioned before. You want to make sure that you're using your diaphragm, doing 40 deep breaths nonstop, or you can do 32. It's cool. And then once you're done with that breathing in that first part of the method, what it's doing is oxygenating your body at a cellular level. You're literally oversaturating your body with oxygen. So when you go into the next part of the Wim Hof method, which is a breath hold, you take a deep breath out, right? Then what happens is you start releasing all that carbon monoxide that most of us are carrying around. So typically it's about a minute hold, or you're holding your breath. And what happens during that minute is that your body thinks you're dying, right? Just to put it bluntly, your body, because you were supposed to be breathing right all the time, so your body feels like you're underwater, you're gonna die, but you're already oxygenated. So it gives you the opportunity to really sit with yourself and allow the body to do what the body is capable of doing, because the body already is oxygenated, right? So when you're able to first get all the oxygen into your body and then hold your breath, and then you start getting all of those chemicals, adrenaline, stress hormones, everything starts coming out. Just as if we're in a life and death situation, it teaches you to sit with it and navigate it a lot better. So when real life stress happens, you're better prepared to feel those same feelings and call them out. You're like, oh, that's just stress. Oh, that's just my body like in fight or flight. And then the third step after you hold your breath is you take a deep breath in for 15 seconds. And that, again, all that oxygen that you're missing, just replenish it for that minute. But the cool thing about the Burnout method is because it's a practice, you can build upon that breath hold. When I started doing it, I could probably do like a minute breath hold. Now I easily do 3 minute holds, and it's really powerful stuff, and that allows me to handle cold better. Like I remember when I was in Arizona, I would go in the snow with a shirt, and I was perfectly fine. And it just really strengthens your whole body, increases your body temperature as well. And during those breath holds, it also gives you the opportunity to do what it's one of the most powerful things that most people don't do, which is sitting down and reflecting with your thoughts. We live most of our day in our heads. Let's make it a nice place to live, right? So what I notice a lot of the time is that we have so much going on. We have trauma. We have uh, you know life responsibilities, and when we look at our brain, I like to describe it as a closet. Like if you have a massive closet filled with all these boxes and all these things, where a lot of people make a mistake, especially when they're starting a breathwork practice, is that they try to organize the entire closet in those 15 minutes. Like if you have a big closet or a big garage or whatever, and you try to take everything out, now you have like all the stuff everywhere. Instead, because you're committed to a practice, we do a little bit of work at a time until we get to a point where our mental closet is truly organized, until we get to a point where our brain and our mind, which is where we spend almost more time, our time, is a nice place to live. So we can feel comfortable. We can actually sit down and reflect. It's very scary work to do. I call this shadow work. So a lot of people avoid it because you honestly, when you're doing shadow work and you're really sitting with your thoughts and everything that's coming up to your brain, that pain feels exactly the same way that it felt when it happened to you, right? So because of that, what's your brain job? To keep you safe and comfortable. So it's going to create all the stories in the world. It's going to create all these ideas to sabotage you from doing that work because it doesn't like it. It's uncomfortable. If it was up to your brain, you would be sitting on a couch with a tube down your throat, feeding you all the time with VR on your head, and like probably, like I said, rubber on you or something, and you just don't have to worry about anything. But that's not a life worth living, first of all, and there's no growth and accountability. So it's so important for us to make sure that we are acknowledging that fact that our brain is not trying to ruin us or hates us or anything like that. Just trying to keep us safe and comfortable. But a lot of those times, it doesn't give us the opportunity to really do that shadow work that's really uncomfortable. And I say this all the time. It one of the hardest things a person can do it is do that shadow work. Like really sit with your thoughts, reflect on them, and if you want to start credit, like journal about them, observe them, detach from them. And I literally do backflips on top of mountains and sides of cliffs, and I do handstands and anytime people are like, I always tell them it's way scarier to do shadow work than it is to do all of those things. So when we acknowledge that and we realize how challenging it is for us, then we can, give ourselves a little bit more grace so that we can really sit down, gain some clarity, and remove all of that stuff that is not us so that we can be ourselves fully authentically. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, 100%. It kind of brought a question to my mind though. What do you say to the people or your clients that tell you like, oh, mental health awareness or spirituality has no place in behavioral analysis?
Well, I would say you fucking up. I'm just kidding. Well, personally, I'm a scientist at heart, right? I was an atheist for a long, long time, and I would consider myself religious. I believe I'm spiritual, and I remember when I was in undergrad, I had a professor. He brought up the idea that spirituality is a choice. We have two choices. We can believe to be we can choose to be spiritual, or we choose not. And if you weigh out the options, like one side, I don't want to be spiritual. I don't believe that there's anything bigger than myself. I don't believe in God or anything like that. You have that option, right? And then the other side, I do believe that there's an afterlife, there's a purpose for all of this. And what happens is that there's two things. Like if you say like no, like I don't believe in anything. Okay, let's say that when you pass, when you die, it's the end of your life, you die, nothing happens, right? And then guess what? You were right. Oh my God. Like, there you go. So your ego is happy. Oh my God, I guess, but you're dead. So your ego is not even there anymore. Um, on the other side, if you do believe, right, and you pass away, then you have all of the infinite um, heavenly benefits, basically. And all you did was make a choice. Also, again, and that's the statistics, right? It's 50-50. You get to choose. Nobody really knows what happens after death, right? So realistically, you get to choose like, okay, things have meaning, everything happens for a reason, or they don't. And personally, I really dove into this because I was like, I don't get it. But if you look at the data, if you look at the research, people who are spiritual, who believe in a higher power, higher life satisfaction, lower stress, less compassion fatigue, and on and on and on and on. So statistically, as a scientist, if we're not just being subjective as a scientist, why would you choose something that's less beneficial for you? Might as well just choose, because we're choosing, right? So might as well choose something that's more empowering, that actually gives you more hope, better future, better life satisfaction. So from my perspective, like yes, you can say spirituality it's irrelevant or whatever, but the data is pretty straightforward. It shows that a lot of people who do have a spiritual practice, they live better lives. So for me, it's just a strategic decision more than anything else. It's just more about me being intentional and being a scientist, like basing it on the science and data, instead of just letting my ego dictate, like, oh no, like I want to be right. You're not even gonna know if you're right. Like you're not even ever gonna know. So why like be so about it? And I was one of those people. I will fight you, and I will do all this stuff, and I would just waste all of this energy that I could have been repurposing for something that's actually more creative, something that's actually empowering, and something that actually moves me closer to my values and goals.
With that being said, I know a lot of that is like that internal behavior, right? That overt behavior. Is there any type of covert behavior or permanent product that you require your clients to bring to sessions or to the table when you guys are working together? That way you can ensure that they're actually putting forth the work that you guys are discussing rather than just being like, yeah, I did my homework. You know what I mean? And they really didn't.
Definitely, definitely. So, um, I love this question. I love this question. I'm all about results, right? And I love the data. I love to have that data. For me, I would say, and you're asking specifically about spirituality, or are you talking about overall working with clients?
I guess in general, just because, like you had said, everybody's journey is different. So you can't, I guess, pigeonhole this question to one aspect of the support that you provide people. So I guess maybe then pick your favorite. If it is spiritual, how do you require permanent product for that or
I love
covert
it.
behavior?
So great question. So for what I notice a lot of the time, the main issue and most people's root cause problem is their self-image, their self-identity. Um, Maxwell Maltz, he wrote a book back in the 50s, 70s. He was a plastic surgeon, and what he did was that he noticed that he would change people's face, he would change things that they didn't like, and then they would still have those feelings afterwards. And he coined the term self-image. And what happens is, and from what I've seen, and what a lot of the data points to, is that it really starts with self-image. So whenever I'm working with someone new and I'm getting started with them, I need to understand what is the current self-image. And typically, the best way to do that is to first break down what results they're getting right now in life. Okay, so like how are you doing financially? How are you doing physically? How are you doing spiritually? And really get that baseline as to where they are. And then this is where it gets a little bit more fun. We want to start really building, we want to start creating that tension between where they are and where they want to go. And this is called the law of the rubber band. A rubber band, you want to make sure that it's stretched. If it's too close, like you're not gonna have that much power. So as we're getting that baseline, we're really understanding the different parts of where they are, the results that they're getting, and understanding that these results come from their self-image. And I'll go deeper into that, of course, don't worry. Then we can start really nailing down, okay, so this is where you are now, this is where you want to go. Okay, what are the steps that we need to take in order to do that? Before we can take any steps, though, we need to shift that self-image. And most people, like you were mentioning, Caitlin, they have, they have a lot of thoughts that are unhelpful, and most of them are repetitive, right? So it's the same 4 or 5 thoughts. So one of the first things that I do when it comes to permanent product is I need you to write 2 things. Just grab 2 pieces of paper. One piece of paper, you're gonna write unhelpful I ams. Basically, ideas about who you are as a person that don't serve you, that do not align with your values. That could be, I'm not good enough. I am slow. I am fat, or whatever it is that might be. And then on the next piece of paper, you're gonna write down helpful I ams. We're gonna be transforming those unhelpful I ams into helpful I ams. And the way that we do this is that we want to make sure that, and the reason we do this is because a lot of the time what people try to do with their unhelpful I ams and those identities that might come from the family, school, work, social media, whatever. I don't care where they come from. It doesn't matter. They're there. And if you sit down and start writing them down, they start coming out right away. So they're there. The reason for, go to therapy, figure it out. But for the most part, it's irrelevant. They're not helpful. So let's replace them. A lot of people try to like push them down or ignore them or act like they're not there. That's not how our brains work. So we need to replace them, like actively. We need to make sure that we have a replacement self-image. So whenever that thought comes up again, we can replace it with a more helpful thought. And my favorite part of this activity is that when you have the 2 lists, and I typically just have people do 5 minutes of each, 5 minutes of unhelpful thoughts, 5 minutes transforming them into helpful thoughts. What you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the unhelpful thoughts list and you're gonna burn it. Because that's not you anymore. So anytime it comes up, at the beginning, you have to intentionally switch that thought to a more helpful thought. Eventually, though, especially as you start gathering the evidence and giving that evidence to your brain, stacking all the evidence that you are this new identity, your brain starts doing it organically, starts doing it naturally for you. And it makes it a lot easier for you to really step into that new identity, into the identity of someone who actually has, an organized brain, an organized mental closet. Because if you feel like you don't have that, there's some idea, some paradigm, some belief system that was given to you that we received and made it wrong, and it's not helping us. Instead, when we are actually making that switch and completely getting rid of this side, it makes it a lot easier for us to start seeing changes before we even start doing breath work, before we even start doing any other stuff. Because if you're not the type of person who does breath work, guess what? You're not going to do breath work. If you're not the type of person who is calm and relaxed at all times, you're not going to be that person, because you're giving your brain a prompt. Your brains are the most powerful computer on the universe. Like ChatGPT, if you're giving it a prompt that's unhelpful, it's going to give you that same result. So we can start switching that prompt to something that actually is more productive. Then our brain starts giving us better solutions, and it can really help us to align with that desired identity. And we can use that tension right from where we are to where we want to go to drive that transformation and really step into that next level. Guess what? You're gonna get to the next level, and what happens every time we get to the next level? Some higher level. So if we're not really going down to the root and changing the self-image with evidence and an undeniable stack of evidence, their brain's not going to believe you. And ultimately, you're just going to revert back to bondage and the comfort zone, like where most people live.
Yeah. And I feel like it's so easy now, like you said, VR goggles on, hanging out. It's so much easier to just disengage and make our brain happy because there's so many things at our fingertips that it's just easier.
Yeah.
But I love that you have people start with that. We actually had Jared Van on a few months
I was
ago
just gonna bring him up.
with his PhD research where he was focusing on like positive thoughts and basically had, I want to say it was middle schoolers, right?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
were basically had like 5 minutes where they had to say all these positive affirmations aloud and out loud, and it actually like improved their overall well-being. It was cool. It was just cool to see that even for, kids in school, it's such an easy intervention we can use, and sometimes we think super intricate.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll tell you this, like most people we do have 20, maybe 30, 50,000 thoughts a day, but typically for most people, it's about 5 to 10 that are just on repeat. They're just on repeat. So we can acknowledge those thoughts, right? Give them the attention that they require because they're there for a reason. And again, transform them into something that's more positive, which like my guy Jared shared, clearly backed by the research, like why it's helpful, it's beneficial. It's a lot easier for us to really start engaging in those positive behaviors. It also eventually becomes mastered and automatic. Like you don't have to even think about it after some time. But it does require that inner shadow work. And in order for us to stick, I've noticed that it's important to really sit with yourself and really break down what's happening. Especially, making sure that you have a proper support system. That's why a lot of the time I wouldn't even share this stuff with people if they don't have proper support system or if they're not working one-on-one with me as a coach or mentor, because it can be very overwhelming for you to live 20, 30, 40 years and never acknowledge this stuff. And now I just told you, hey, by the way, like you have all these thoughts and you actually have control over how you can transform them into something that's more productive. And that can be very overwhelming. It can be very painful, and without proper social support, it could just be very tedious and hard. So it's easy to just revert back to just the easy stuff. And like I said, just numbing out the brain with alcohol, like Netflix or whatever. Definitely easier. And it's just getting easier. So the fact that it's getting easier should tell you this is very important because it's going to get even easier to do this. So the more that we wait, the harder it's going to be in the long term. So this shadow work just needs doing. And at the end of the day, the work that we do in the dark always comes to light. Like this nobody can do your push-ups for you. Nobody can do the shadow work for you. And it's so crucial for us to commit to ourselves and be okay with that uncomfortability for a little bit, just so that we can free ourselves from the shackles of an identity that no longer serves us.
Yeah. To switch up a little bit, you are a phenomenal entrepreneur. You have made so many sacrifices. You've done so many jobs in the field. I want to talk about your pitfalls and some of like the shit in the mud type of situations, and how you kind of climbed yourself out of it. Because again, you just said no one can do it for you. So how did you get out of the mud in those types of situations?
He trained for it.
So I'm a massive believer that there's beauty in the struggle. I definitely just love that, and I'll share with you guys this as well because I believe, especially as a man of color, it's so important for me to be open, honest, and vulnerable. So that's how I show up everywhere that I go. And I can tell you this, but I keep it ABA as well. One of my biggest challenges was, I believe, 2021. I was an RBT at the time. I was a lead RBT, so I was like teaching other RBTs how to, do the work, and um, basically midway through COVID and everything like that, and I ended up getting diagnosed with depression, and I was very confused. I was working out consistently. I was spending time in nature. I was healthy. I had strong relationships. And I was still depressed, and I was very confused. I was like, "What's going on?" And the more that I dove into it, the more that I realized, I was just living out of alignment. I was living my life for somebody else, and also I wasn't really prioritizing the things that I needed to prioritize. I noticed that when I was like really down bad. My dad was sick. I was, full time in master's degree. working full time in ABA, doing all of these things. And I just honestly, like, that's when I first ever in my life I felt suicidal. And this is how I am. Like, so everyone's like kind of taken back. Like, you, like, I could never imagine you be that way, but I definitely was. I would cry in my car on the way to the clinic. Like, I was just like, I don't know if I could do this. It was really rough for me, and it took a lot of me to you know, give myself permission to fully step into my light, to really disregard what anyone might think or all the projections out that other people might think, and really start looking for the solution at the root cause. And for me, that looked like really understanding my gut health. That's something that a lot of you learn all the time about, get your macros right, exercise, spend time in nature, do all the subject water, and that's cool. I think definitely do those things. But what I noticed is that all of that stuff is irrelevant if your gut health is out of whack, because your gut connects to your brain, right? So of course I was depressed. I wasn't prioritizing my gut health. So as soon as I started really learning about gut health, first of all, making sure that I have homeostasis, I have balance. I'm removing my parasites from the gut as well. I'm making sure that I'm not only focusing on my macronutrients, but also my micronutrients. It allowed me to give my body the tools he needs to create all those feel good chemicals instead of doing what most psychiatrists do, which is giving you extrinsic chemicals that are not even yours. And typically, they have to continue to up the dose because you become tolerant to them. So I was actually able to completely get off depression medication by doing this, and it allowed me to have a deeper understanding of how my body works. Because people say all the time, like, listen to your gut, but if your gut is compromised, don't listen to your gut. Yeah. Like, because there's parasites in there that have a direct connection to your brain that will tell you go eat those Oreos. And I was a big Oreo lover. Yeah. I was a big Oreo lover. I'm gonna tell you the truth. But I thought that it was me having the craving, and it wasn't. What was happening was that they lived off of all those chemicals and all those processed sugars. So, like, as soon as I started getting rid of those, I noticed that those cravings went away because the cravings weren't me. I was just feeding the parasites. Because even when when you have those parasites and you eat, 30 minutes later you're hungry again because you didn't feed you. You're not nourished. Like, the parasites are doing great, they're living their best life, but you're not. So for me, like, as soon as I started really taking care of my gut health, it allowed me to start gaining more clarity up here and remove a lot of that brain fog that was completely taking over my life, and I didn't even know I had. I thought that's just how everybody, kind of lived. Like, you don't really know where you're going. It's hard to kind of really nail down your values. But as soon as I started really bringing down that fog, it helped me to better better align with my values. That's when I actually started, like, really leaning into the work that drives me. Really started doing a lot of that teaching, a lot of the public speaking, a lot of that work that actually I'm passionate about. But it's really difficult to do that if you just have so much going on. If you're reading a book and every paragraph you got to read it again because you're like, I don't even know what's happening. So I remember during that time, it was really difficult. Like, that summer was really challenging for me. And luckily I was blessed to really lean into, holistic approaches that actually go at the root cause. And also, most importantly, I had an amazing support system that allowed me to navigate through this processes. Because during that time, I had my first anxiety attack. I've never had one in my life. And once I was able to get, my mental capacity in order, I never had one ever again, and it's been amazing. So that, to talk about the trenches and talk about the struggle, I've been there. I've been an RBT. I've been a physical education teacher for special needs kids, working with over 100 students a week, of all functioning levels, nonverbal, AAC devices, aggressive. I've done it all. And once I actually was able to, take care of myself properly, I was able to show up better for the people that I serve. Because at the end of the day, we're here to provide quality services. So if I'm half-assing everything, then the way that I show up is also going to be half-assed, and that's against my values and against my integrity. So that time was really difficult, dealing with family, dealing with health, dealing with all those things coming together while having life happen. But once I decided, hey, I'm gonna give myself permission to really take care of me, yeah, allow me to take care of many, many more people. And now I'm in a position where I do presentations for organizations with hundreds of staff, right? So like it allowed me to leverage myself more so that I can make a bigger impact. And now I teach teachers. There's beauty in the struggle, and every time this struggle is trying to teach you something, if you let it. But most people have a hard time reflecting for 5 minutes, and if you allow yourself to reflect for 5 minutes a day, and if you really want to sugarcoat it and you do it twice a day, you're gonna start noticing a lot of that brain fog go away. You're gonna start noticing a lot more clarity as to what your values are, and most importantly, what do you want from life? The amount of times that I talk to high level professionals and business owners and all that stuff, and you ask them what do you want, and they don't know, it's startling to me because it's so easy to not think about it, to just continue and go on the grind mode, and that almost killed me. And I believe that my purpose now is to use those tools to make sure that doesn't kill anybody else.
I'm really happy you brought up gut health. I don't think enough people give it a second thought into one, how they're feeling, and two, how they're taking care of their internal needs to be open for behavior change. If anybody wants to learn more, honestly, there's a great documentary on Netflix. It's super cute. They put like graphics to things and they really break it down for you. It's called Hack Your Health: The Secrets of Your Gut. And they talk about everything that you had just brought up, the fact that it's like your second brain. So if you're feeding it all this junk, it sends signals to the brain, makes you feel like crap, makes you want those things more. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people ask me all the time is how I stick to cutting things out of my diet that I know that aren't good for me. But in reality, like you had said, after a period of time, those things that signal to the brain that they want, Oreos, Doritos, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, like they'll die off because you're no longer feeding them. So your body actually rids themselves of it and they don't send signals to the brain anymore that you want those things. So for anybody who thinks that they can't give up pizza, macaroni and cheese, it is possible. You just got to give it some time.
Yeah.
Or Oreos for you. But I really am happy that you brought that up because, again, just like we tell staff, like your learners have their internal needs have to be met before they're able to make behavior change. And it's no different for us as adults. You have to set yourself up for success, and the gut health is one of those things.
100%. Do you guys mind if I get a little spicy in here?
Go for
Yeah,
it.
please.
Go right ahead.
So, because I think sometimes when you first learn about this, and you first learn about taking care of your gut health, you kind of feel bad because you're like, this is kind of my responsibility. This is my fault. But I want to bring some clarity to this because a lot of it has to do with the way that, especially in the States, the way that the food system is set up. I don't know if you guys know about Monsanto, but first Google search for you. Start looking into Monsanto. Back in the 1970s, they introduced a chemical called glyphosate, and it's used in most of the crops in the states. And what glyphosate does is it's a weed killer. It kills weeds around the crops, but it kills anything that's organic, right? So like as you can imagine, that's going to probably not be very good for your gut flora. And we have some good bacteria and good parasites in there that actually do help us. The thing is, as you can imagine, if it kills anything organic, why are the crops not dying? Well, they're genetically modified to survive glyphosate, right? And what a lot of people think is like, oh yeah, no, they spray them with all this stuff, and I'll wash it when it comes home or whatever. But the thing with glyphosate is that you can't wash it off. You can't cook it off. It grows into the food through the root system. It goes into the soil. If you want to turn a glyphosate farm into an organic farm, you need to flip it for at least 10 years before you can actually get anything organic, because it goes so deep and it depletes the soil so much that even when you're eating the broccoli or all that stuff, there's almost no nutrients in there. And it's mostly glyphosate. And over 90% of Americans actually tested positive for glyphosate in the urine. Glyphosate is found in wine, beer, rain, snow, grass. It's really difficult to stay away from it. So the fact that it's been used in farming since the 70s, and also you start looking, this is correlational, but if you start looking at it, it gets pretty real. You start looking at obesity rates start going up. You start seeing diabetes going up all around the same time. All around the same time. And again, like it's a little bit difficult to get causal because ain't nobody trying to get fed glyphosate for 3 months and and figure out if that's what's causing it. But we can look at the countries that use it and the countries that don't. It's illegal in most of Europe. I moved to Dominican Republic and I noticed a lot of the gut inflammation that I was having in the States completely went away. Because most of the farming here is organic. It's just what's been done. So a lot of the time we think that, it's okay, my habits and everything, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of those, really highly developed countries, they're either food deserts, meaning that there's no access to healthy foods, or food swamps, which means just fast food everywhere, right? And when you're living in those places, it becomes really difficult for you to feed your body what it's asking for. And when you have all that glyphosate in your body and you're not removing it properly, it's going to disrupt your gut microbiome, which ultimately, of course, can disrupt your mental health. If you and again, like if you're like, oh, like that sounds a little iffy, really look into it. Look up glyphosate. Look up Monsanto. Look up how glyphosate came together. It used to be used to clean pipes for decades before they actually used it in our food that we eat. Farmers have to use hazmat suits to spray it on our crops because there's been multiple lawsuits for farmers getting cancer from this. The World Health Organization has deemed it as a possible carcinogen as well. And so, like, when you really dive into that rabbit hole, which is a pretty deep one, you start really seeing those connections. And then you start seeing, okay, so the food system is messed up. Okay, so, but if you're sick from the food, you need to go to typical medical system, right? And then they're going to give you more medication that typically just treats symptoms instead of the root cause, and they make money by keeping you sick. If you go one time and you're healed, they don't make any more money from you. They want that recurring income. So when we actually are able to step away from those systems and engage in systems that are more supportive for us, you start noticing all of those symptoms just organically disappear. Instead of us like forcing this health into ourselves, we can just start paying attention to the things that actually matter and look at the real history of how we grow food, and we can start moving away. And most importantly, we can start voting with our dollars because we get to choose what kind of foods that we eat, and we get to choose what kind of systems we support.
Yeah.
Is your head going to fall off your body or mine faster from the amount of aggressive nodding that we've been doing throughout this entire speech
I'm like,
here?
yes,
We're like,
yes.
yes,
It's
our heads are like.
Sometimes it's so hard because in, some places you have to be so careful about like how far into the rabbit hole you go before people are like, get out of here with that. There's no way. But
Yeah.
I love that you're saying all this because it's so true. And, working with the clients that we work with and, a lot of the kids that we do work with too have a lot of needs, and then they also have food restrictive diets, and then
Yeah.
the foods that we're giving them, and it all counts. And sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy when I'm like, hey, like maybe let's not give kids M&Ms all day, and they're like, well, it works. I'm like, well, yeah, they're addicted
Right.
to sugar. What else do we have that is not M&Ms, and like can we shift this to more naturalistic reinforcers? And I feel like people get very upset about that because they're
Yeah.
like, well, it worked.
And
Yes,
It's like the
but
history of it working.
yeah.
It
And no one's
combats
telling them otherwise.
a new
So
idea.
it's like, well, M&Ms can't be that bad.
And it's genetically modified to be addicting. Like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the worst part. It's
Yes.
like you're literally setting kids up for failure because, you're just packing them with a bunch of things that makes them want it more and more and more.
Yeah.
And the only way to really stop that is to completely cut it out of your diet because any of us who, again, going back to cutting something out, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And you're a full functioning adult with money. So you can go buy those Oreos if you really wanted to, if
Right.
you're having a bad day and you haven't had
You can
that.
have Uber bring it right to
Yeah.
your door. You don't
Correct.
even have to
It's-
leave.
Especially with like new packaging and when they make it look more visually
Yeah.
pleasing. I mean, the fact that we live in, again, you said America and New Jersey, where literally if we even drive out of this office and down the road, there's a Chick-fil-A, a Wawa, a McDonald's,
Starbucks.
a Starbucks,
Don't get me started on their
an
protein
Arby's.
bullshits.
Like there's 7 different drive-throughs within a 5 mile, less than that, within a 5 minute drive. So we're oversaturated with like, especially given like what we do for a career, and then we drive to where we need to go. So sometimes you're mentally depleted, and like it starts to kind of break you down where it's like, all right, I'll skip on that. And then you see 7 other restaurants where you're like, oh, fuck,
Yeah.
maybe I do need some nuggets. And the one thing that like I love that you've kind of driven home is everything is a choice. So you can choose to go and get those nuggets, but then you're also making a choice to make your body feel like shit.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to do the hard thing where you can wait for your food that you might have packed, or wait until you get home to have the food that you know that is like already prepared. You know that you're already going to be into it. You know that you're meeting your macros, your micros, and everything else that's better for your gut health. Again, you're making that choice. It's just a hard choice.
Yeah.
The hard choice is always the delayed choice, the delayed reinforcer. And I
Yes.
think that's the hardest part is we're so used to that instant gratification that anything that you cannot physically see, touch,
Mhm.
it goes right out the window. Like that's why
Mhm.
sticking to the gym is like one of the hardest things for people to do because to get to where they want to be or where they see themselves, it takes a really long time and it's
Mhm.
hard. So you can make a few steps in the right direction, but being that it doesn't reach the reinforcement that they're looking for as quickly as they'd like, they
They
become
give up.
very unsuccessful. Right.
Yeah.
And then that burnout kicks in.
Yeah.
So again, we're just genetically modified to want things fast and fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Everything is
Hurry
that
up and
money.
wait is
Yeah,
like the
Yeah.
mentality.
correct. But I know we're nearing that time.
Yeah.
So
I have so many more things to say,
I
but
know.
that's okay. We
And
need
then
a
we
part
also
two.
wanted to touch about your book and see, your inspiration there. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to go into that and then
And then
I
maybe your retreats,
yeah.
your Young
Anywhere
Kings
they can-
Academy.
Yeah.
We have so many things to
I do
try.
also have like a hot button question for you,
I have a
depending on
45. That's my
Oh.
only.
how you're feeling about it. Go for it. What do you think the field of ABA is doing wrong?
Oh.
Oh, we're getting into it. Okay. Okay.
I'm
This
trying
is
not to
all my-
cancel you right now, but
Or what's one thing the field of
Improve.
ABA should improve upon?
So I think that the field right now, it's trying to imitate what was done in psychology, and I think we can do better. We can tell how a lot of people in psychology and mental health are not doing well. Most psychiatrists, most mental health professionals are not doing okay. But it's been a system that's been around for 100 years. ABA is a little bit newer, so we want to use the things that have worked for them. And when I say this is because we want to copy that same structure, and we want to set up our plans and our clinics in the same way, where a lot of the time is sedentary behavior. We're running programs with kids sitting at a table for 3 hours. We're doing screens, artificial light. It's a lot of stuff that doesn't really serve us, and it doesn't help our clients. I think right now we're really focused on changing behavior that's not really beneficial. One of the reasons why I almost left the field, I'm not gonna lie, is because especially when I worked in clinic, I remember, seeing the brown diet that the parents were feeding the kids. And the brown diet, if you don't know about this, is the nuggets, mac and cheese, the gummies, like the thing that most of our kiddos eat. And to me, when I noticed, and I was blessed to have some amazing BCBAs that I worked with, BCBADs that I worked with under as well that were amazing, is that they gave me the opportunity to tackle behaviors in a more engaging way, doing more physical activity, actually, working on eating healthier foods. And when you start doing that, you notice that all of the other behaviors tend to be just a symptom of that root cause. Because if you're just regulated, if you're in pain, if your joints hurt, it's going to be very difficult for you to want to do anything. You just want to sit down and like be on your iPad. So I think that we tend to reinforce those behaviors because it is easier sometimes to do, and it looks nice, and it's like it creates the all of that data that we see in the nice pretty graphs for a couple of months. But what's really happening in the long term? What are we seeing really in the field? More and more of our clients are overweight. A lot of them are depressed. A lot of them are struggling, and that's the same thing that's happening in psychology and mental health, right? So if we want to do better, then we can. And ABA doesn't have to be just about DTT or let me teach this kid how to read. What does it matter if he knows what a triangle is if he doesn't know how to regulate his nervous system, if he doesn't know how to breathe? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So I think that one of the biggest problems that I see in the field is that we're prioritizing the shit that's really not important. We're choosing urgent over important, and once we start really making that shift to say, okay, what's most important? Yes, it might be a little bit more challenging right now. It might even be a little more punishing at the beginning, you were sharing about the gym. Like it's punishing at the beginning, more than it is reinforcing, but ultimately it's going to allow us to have that maintenance that we talk about, the generalization that we talk about all the time. Because as soon as I notice it all the time, as soon as services stop, there's a lot of regression that happens. So that should tell you enough. And especially as professionals in the field, I notice that too. Like we try to tackle the urgent things right now, and then we fall off. I've been doing this for a minute. I've been doing ABA in fitness and wellness for a long time, and I noticed that a lot of people in the field, they approach it in this way. And how can you lead someone else if you can't lead yourself? Right? So for me, I think that one of the biggest problems that I see is that prioritization of urgent, like, oh my God, we need to fix this right now. Here, have some goldfish. Here, have this, instead of like, okay, let's get a little bit uncomfortable for a couple of weeks. Sometimes it's even just a couple of days, and then we can start really building that repertoire so that we can really strengthen those real life skills that are going to help them in the real world. When you're actually stressing about how to pay your bills, when you're stressing about a breakup or things are coming up, with health for family or anything that happens in that regard. That's real, like socially applicable shit. And for the most part, I see a lot of the time it's like, oh, let's really just focus on getting good data as soon as possible right away. So we can show that we're making progress. And I think that's not helping our clients, is not helping the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that answer. No, I appreciate
That's
that
great.
answer.
I 100% agree, and I think more should be focused on that because right now, like you said, we don't. It's like here, give the kid the goldfish. They'll be happy. They'll be great. They're working for it because they're probably addicted to them.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why they're gonna be on task for that period of time. And I saw somewhere I screenshot it, and I keep saying I'm gonna put it in our new staff orientation. And it basically a BCBA posted on Instagram, and it said if you have a client who will only work for one reinforcer and one reinforcer only, you've essentially failed as a behavior analyst because you've created dependency rather than allowing them to access their natural environment in a more productive way.
And especially with the iPads, come on, like they be just like, here's the iPad, and I'm like, come on, like that's not health. Once in a while, it doesn't hurt. Like that's cool. I use the phone, right? Like screens are not bad, but when you develop that dependence on something like that, that's so damaging. You're not really helping that person, even though the data might say that, oh, they know how to tack that school bus there. Sure, that's cool, but if the iPad's not there, they're probably not even going to do it at all.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to do it at all. So yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about, and that's something that I've applied in school. So I worked at the biggest autism school in Arizona, like massive school, and I developed the entire curriculum for PE as well, using ABA, using physical activity, the physical activity guidelines for children, and it was really, it took me back seeing kindergartners who were so overweight that they would sit down at crisscross applesauce, legs crossed, and they wouldn't be able to get up. Like we'll help them out, and that's insane. And like when we're adults, we have the ability to choose, but children don't. Children don't. They do. They are gonna engage in the behaviors that we make easier for them. And a lot of the time, where we choose that ease over that really, that long term progress, and it can create really, really a lot of damage. And my main concern is that a lot of the time, some of that damage is irreversible. You get to a point where there's no kind of exercise or diet that can help you go back from it. And we got to get them before it gets to that point. And I see it all the time in the field, like, especially with a lot of BCBAs, BCBADs, like ABA kind of becomes the identity, especially ABA and autism. And, applied behavior analysis is a tool. It doesn't only have to be about, doing tacting or manding. It can definitely be used for teaching breathwork. It can be used for physical activity. It can be used for many other things that are ultimately going to be way more beneficial than keeping people in these cycles and end up looking like the people in the movie Wall-E, when they were like floating around with the little thing. Where a lot of people are going, it's just easier. And yeah, like I know you guys asked as well about some of the work that I'm doing, and the books. My main book is called Relax and Awake. That's where I break down the 6 pillars of wellness. What inspired that book was losing my dad earlier this year. He didn't have those tools. He didn't have those strategies, and he literally took his life. He didn't know how to, navigate that shadow work. He didn't really know how to really organize that mental closet. He didn't have those tools to do that. So what he did was he just numbed himself with alcohol all the way till his body gave up. And I see that a lot, especially with men as well. And in my book, Relax and Awake, I go deep into tools and strategies. Everything's practical. Every single chapter is practical, where you can walk out of every chapter and actually have something that you can apply. And of course, it's science based. There's data to back it up. It's not just like anecdotal, but what's actually working right now for our performers. So that book is something that I really hold dear and close to my heart. I'm really vulnerable in there, and I share with everybody my journey through burnout, losing my dad, all of that stuff, and how I was able to navigate all of that because of the tools in the book. Was I would have probably ended up not doing anything. I probably would have ended up like being an alcoholic myself when I went through those challenges. But because I was properly equipped, it allowed me to navigate those issues a lot better. And like everybody that works for me, they know about this stuff, so they experience it. And I don't even know how many testimonials of people who have applied these strategies, and I live in a full life, and are able to get more done without sacrificing their health and their well-being, which is what a lot of the time they ask you to do. I think that doesn't make sense. And that's, to me, that's the foundation of my consulting practice. And this is, where I come in and go into organizations and teach the strategies one-on-one, and I help mastermind and coach through a lot of these challenges that come up as professionals. And my team does the same as well, and we go throughout the country, throughout the world, and we educate on this, because burnout is on the rise. It's the highest it's ever been, and it's only climbing. So is depression, so is suicide rate. So things are not working right now, right? So what we're noticing, and it's really taking the holistic approach, but not forgetting about the science, because there's also a lot of people who are kind of very woo, and there's no data to back up what they're talking about. I love holistic, but I also love the data and the science, and that's where I'm all about. And now that I'm living here in Dominican Republic, I'm in the process of opening, the first center in my province for special needs individuals. And this never been done before. There's no infrastructure. There's no BACB here. There's none of that. So really putting all of those things in place, I'm only able to do all of those things that I do because I have the tools that I outline in that book, and because I've been able to work with some of the top mentors and coaches from all over the world. And right now, I get to live this life because of the work that I've been doing. When I lost my dad, it was really the hardest thing that I've been through in February, but I was able to navigate it and put two funeral arrangements together in 2 different countries, because he wanted to be buried in the Dominican Republic, but he passed away in the States. And I was able to navigate all of that, relaxed and awake, because of the tools that I've been able to gather through my experience and in the work that I do. And now, all of this is coming to light, and I'm noticing how a lot of people are seeking to be relaxed and awake, and they're trying to figure out how to do it. And there's a lot of people know what to do, but they just don't know how to bridge that knowing and doing gap. And I believe my purpose on this earth is to help people bridge that knowing and doing gap, because we're not lacking information. We're just lacking that bridge. How do I bridge? Okay, I know this is what I need to do, but now I'm doing it. And most importantly, I'm doing it unconsciously. I'm doing it automatically.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, because What a journey.
It's all love. It's all love.
So as we're wrapping up, where can our listeners find you? I know you've got quite a few social media handles.
For sure. So social media, it's Carlos DR. You'll find me in most places. They are mostly active on Instagram. People have been forcing me to go on LinkedIn, so we're doing a lot more work on LinkedIn now. And when it comes to the work that I do with corporate wellness and work with organizations, highperformancebalance.com, that's a place to go to really learn more about the work that we're doing, to meet the rest of the team, the PhDs, like the movement experts. We have facilitators who do corporate wellness for Amazon and massive organizations, and we got together and realized how much of this work is needed. And yeah, like literally right now, actually on Friday, we're going to be presenting about this on the Southside Global Conference, and opening up that door for those organizations who see their organizations dealing with burnout, compassion fatigue, and just overwhelm, and giving them actual tools that work and that are immediately applicable, so that they can get more done with less stress.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
Thank you.
We're excited for a part 2 to be continued.
Check out thekarmacollection.com for stylish ABA-inspired apparel that spreads the message of behavior science with every wear. Free shipping on orders over $120. Thekarmacollection.com